Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to my channel. This is going to be kind of interesting because it's the first actual chat I'm doing on YouTube. Obviously, I've done some panels and I've had some authors come and do some readings, but this will be the first time I'm just having a chat. So, but today I got to make sure I'm starting to get it down with like where my fingers need to point. But I've got Devin Madson today, the author of the upcoming We Ride the Storm, which is right up there, and it's all of its gloriousness with the new Orbit cover and the original self-pub cover. But Devin, welcome. How are you doing this morning?
Oh, I'm very good. I'm glad to know I'm a guinea pig this morning for your first ever chat. Lovely, lovely. Yeah, it's bright and early here in Australia. It's only 9 a.m. So this is I have just gotten out of bed and done my hair face. So lovely to see you all.
Well, we're glad you're or I'm glad that you're the first face that you see, except for probably your husband and your child. So.
yeah, I saw them first. But otherwise, even though I live in the middle of the bush, I have not seen anybody else this morning.
And I mean, I guess obviously with the times too, it's you probably don't see too many faces, with social distancing and stuff. At least I haven't. We've been pretty much quarantined for about 3 months now, since my wife she'll be 37 weeks pregnant tomorrow. So, it's been an interesting ride. Yeah, we're like, there's no way we could have done this, earlier and just predicted that we were going to have a pandemic and have to be quarantined.
Yeah. No, that's awful. Poor thing. It'll be over soon, I guess.
Yeah,
pregnancy is not necessarily a pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she keeps thinking about getting like the onesies that go, here I am, born during pandemic, or I've been in vitro or whatever for this song, or I've been waiting and cooking, and this is what I come out to,
Yeah.
So.
Enjoy.
But it's either she's either going to be here 2 weeks early on Father's Day, which is the 21st, or my birthday, which is the 22nd. So it's just all up in the air right now.
Yeah, who knows if babies that come when they want.
Yeah, exactly. So just kind of to start out, would you mind telling me, or telling the audience a little bit about yourself, kind of growing up, going through school, and then how you got into writing?
Okay, I am an Australian. If you can't tell by the accent, I have a pretty boring life story, really, childhood, So I wanted to write stories from about the age of 6 or 7. I told my parents when I was 7 that I was going to be an author. My mom still has a book that I wrote when I was 6 called The Little Sad Christmas Tree. And because I couldn't write happy stories even then, apparently. So it's a story of a Christmas tree that he is growing in the woods, and his mother gets cut down and taken away to be sold as a Christmas tree. And he cries a lot, and all the other Christmas trees laugh at him for crying so much. And then he gets cut down and taken to a shop and decorated all lovely, but nobody wants to buy him. So he cries some more. And then I ran out of pages. And so I just miraculously had him be reunited with his mother at the end. I'm not sure I was trying to say something about like the afterlife there. I just ran out of pages. But yeah, so that's one that my parents kept for me. And it kind of didn't get much better from there. The only other stories I remember writing in my youth was one about a dog that died, and another really terrible romance where it wasn't really a romance because the main character wasn't looking when she crossed the road and got hit by a truck. So I don't know. Like I don't. Happy stories aren't my forte. I like them to be emotionally ravaging. So I got into fantasy though. Like, I mean, I've always been a fantasy reader. Like I read the Red Bull books when I was younger. I a lot of like the sort of YA sci-fi, although we didn't really call it YA at the time. It was just sci-fi for kids. I don't know. I really loved those a lot. But the first adult fantasy book I got given when I was about 15, and that was The Belgariad by David Eddings, which I think is a pretty traditional entry point for people my age. So, that's not exactly surprising either. And while I wouldn't go back and read it now, I don't think it's aged all that well. I loved it at the time. I went from being, I'm going to be an author to I'm going to be a fantasy author now. This is the stuff. Yeah, this is my dream. So yeah, it's not particularly exciting, but there you go. That's my writing journey. And then I wrote a lot. I didn't know any authors. I didn't have a writing group. I didn't have anything. I sat by myself. I didn't even have social media until I actually, started publishing books. So all of my sort of developmental writing phase was done mostly by myself, with the occasional friend that I trusted to actually give me honest feedback. So, I just wrote, and then I went, nope, that's not good enough. And I'll just write it again and keep going again. Although the first time I thought it was amazing, because you think your first thing is amazing.
Of course.
So I didn't actually join kind of the community until much later. So I didn't really know how to do anything. So I just kind of did it by myself, including publishing, because I didn't know how to get a traditional publisher. So
But to say that way of I guess not having like a social media presence and stuff, it just seems so foreign nowadays, because everybody uses their critiques of others kind of in their community or in their following, or other writers that are kind of in the same genre mesh as them. And it's interesting that because I can't really think back to a time where that wasn't a thing. Granted, I've only really been in like the reading scene for 5 or 6 years, but that's since Twitter and Facebook and everything was a mainstay. I don't even know how you would have done all this stuff through MySpace. I can't even remember how MySpace works. So.
No, I don't think I had one. I don't like I had MSN, so that was my joint to my friends. So I had one particular friend who every time I would finish a chapter, I would send it to her over MSN, and she would live react as she read it. She was like my super enthusiastic person. And her boyfriend was the critiquer. So he would read the whole book afterwards and tell me everything that was wrong with it. So they were like my two champions. They really kind of helped me through those early phases, which was great. But yeah, that was just MSN. I don't know how I don't even know how I would have found a writing group. I don't know. I was fairly insular and not particularly outgoing, and just also very obsessive, so anything that would take me away from the time sitting writing at the computer was bad time. I would sit down and write 14, 16 hours a day on days that I wasn't working. And, and I only worked at that time, I only worked as a waitress a couple of nights a week. So it was like really easy to just write all the time. Pre-kids too. Didn't have kids back then.
Yeah, I can imagine it only gets more difficult.
Oh yeah, much harder.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know if you would have been able to have a community on MySpace, because it was like a singular thing at a time. You couldn't interact with or at least if I remember correctly, you couldn't interact with multiple people at a time. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you could just throw something out there and everybody see it at once. Right. I feel like MySpace was just like it's like the early high school years, where you'd throw up like a cool picture and you'd have a really cool song when people come visit your page, and you'd say like some random stuff. Yeah, it was
We're showing out age here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then Facebook came along, and it was kind of the same thing, but you could interact with a lot more people at one time. And then Twitter came along and just blew all that out of the water, because you can follow thousands of people and and just never be able to keep up.
Yeah. I do love Twitter. I think Twitter has kind of become my social media home. I didn't get it for years and years. It just didn't make sense to me. And I was just sitting on Facebook like an old person, like, yep. This is my place. I get this. This is sensible. And then when I figured Twitter out and I actually started sort of interacting with the community, I'm like, no, I like this. This is good. Conversation. I mean, it's not nuanced. It's got lots of problems, but just I like the way it kind of works and has a community feel that everybody can be a part of. There's no kind of gatekeepiness to the way that Twitter works in its community, which I like.
Yeah. And it's, it can become overwhelming. Like I feel like every now and then I've got to sort of comb through who I follow, because there are some times where the people I actually really want to see, like what they're up to or like what they've got coming out next or stuff, especially all the main authors I follow. I feel like I never see their stuff, and I've just got to go search them out all individually because I've got so much fluff that just fills in my feed. So, but yeah, it's over the past few years, I've kind of started using it more as a medium. I'm getting really close to just being done with Facebook because I don't feel like anybody sees anything I put on there. So unless it's like a baby, or let's be honest, that's about it. Like, if we post, we posted about us.
Really good meme.
Yeah. And Jonathan Wood beats me to all of those. So I give up. But yeah, so I think it's going to be Twitter, and, I do a little bit of Instagram, just because of books. So, I mean, it's just another place where I can throw a picture of something up and just be like, hey, I got this, check it out, but yeah, Facebook's dead to me, just like MySpace was dead to me years ago. So I have to know, so at an early age, why such a morbid story about Christmas trees?
I don't know. Okay, just so everybody is clear, my parents are lovely humans. I didn't have a sad, terrible upbringing in any way. It was lovely. I am kind of that really dull, kind of middle class, outer suburbs, family. My parents weren't even divorced. It was like exactly kind of standard. So I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's just the way my mind works. I find what really speaks to me isn't like happy. Like I like happy things, right? I really like things that have happy endings and stories that are happy. Like it's not that I don't like happy stuff, but the things that sort of speak to me deeply are the difficult things, like the emotional kind of complexities of life. That stuff really grips and like fascinates me, and clearly did from a really young age. I just didn't have sort of much emotional depth to pour from, except, oh God, my mother is gone, I'm going to cry, and now people are laughing at me. That's essentially like, my parents are gone and people are laughing at me, is essentially like the depth of awfulness I could think of when I was 6. So, and I think it's just that. Like there's an episode of Doctor Who, which one is it? Blink, I think, where one of the characters says that sadness is like happiness for deep people. And while I think it's a bit of an odd line in that, like, to say that you have to be deep, but it spoke to me in the sense of like, yeah, like sadness is happy to me, like it's special to me, it's interesting. I engage with it on a really intense level in a way that happiness doesn't do. So I don't think you have to be deep for that to happen. Like, but that particular line, I went, wow, yeah, that's me. Oh my God, sadness is fine. It's really interesting. It's complex. It's deep. I love it. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just a bit strange.
Well, see, I had a chat with Nick Bartel the other day, and we were talking about how our viewing of like television stuff has changed since the pandemic started, and how we kind of go from watching all this happy stuff to kind of like shows where people spiral and like their emotions just get torn down. And I hate to say, I find joy in this. I don't know why that is. But I kind of enjoy watching a person spiral a little bit, especially when it's like something ridiculous, like like a getting married at first sight and stuff. Where people, they're just so infatuated with each other for like a week, and then the honeymoon phase is over, and then it just goes straight down. And I'm just like, this is what I'm here for.
Yeah. I think it's validating. I think that's what it is in this case, especially to, we're going through all these really kind of complex emotions where we look at ourselves and we go, well, we're really well off. Those of us who still have our jobs, who haven't been sick or lost really close family members, we're like, we know how lucky we are. And yet we still feel so intensely stressed because the world is like on fire. And it's like, and you can just for no reason just suddenly be triggered into like something a little bit akin to like panic and like hyper anxiety when nothing happened to you. So when you see that like depicted on TV or in books or wherever you like to get your media, it's really validating to be like, it's not just me. Like this is normal human experience and behavior. We are all like in any situation of heightened emotion, even if it is married at first sight, which is, a really, to me, yes, a strange thing to get hyperly emotional about. But, you can't deny that those people are really like intensely connected to what's happening to them in the same way that we are intensely connected to what's happening to us, even if what's happening to us is like way more serious.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
but it's still validating to see, and also I think in that case, that particular one, to be able to kind of have the humor factor of watching it be about something not serious. I think that one has a double bit, but definitely the validation of the complexity. And I find that when I engage with these kind of media that is sad or complex or whatever, that it's about, I have so many, and I'm sure we all do have so many like sort of deep thoughts about life and society and difficulties and all the things that we often don't talk about, either because we don't have someone we trust to talk about them or because we actually just can't put them into words at all, even if we have someone to talk to. So when you see it in a book or a show or something, and someone actually probably puts into words that thing that you're feeling, or you have a realization based on something that a character is experiencing that's deep and complex, like that's the bit that really speaks to me, where I'm like, yes, you are helping me to understand my inner thoughts and complex ideas about this particular subject, even if I don't necessarily agree or would never experience it or anything else. And I think that's what really grips me about media that is not just happy, and apparently why I seek to do that in all of my books, even when I was sick.
So tell me, who would you say are some of your writing influences, maybe early on and maybe even now?
That's a really complicated one because so many of my writing influences aren't fantasy, which is weird. So I think in terms of, the ones that I learned the most from in a writing capacity, the ones that I know I did so, probably first and foremost was Georgette Heyer, which is, she was a Regency romance author, but not in the Regency period. So she wrote in the 1920s, 1930s, about, the same time as Jane Austen. But what I really like, I've read her books again and again and again, even though they all have happy endings, and they are romances. And I've never actually read very widely in the genre apart from her, which is an interesting thing. It's just her that really grips me, and it's her character work. She has extremely nuanced character work. It's very there's no such thing as a cardboard cutout in the world of Georgette Heyer, and she does her. A lot of romantic heroines or heroes even tend to be kind of perfect. And it was a thing that she did where she made it so they weren't perfect. They really had their struggles that felt real instead of kind of, manufactured. And no matter what, she could still make you love them. you rooted for them. You wanted this to work out regardless of how much of an asshole at any point they were actually being. And it was really quite amazing. So I think I learned an awful lot about character work from reading her books. She was also extremely good at subtle character-based humor, which again, I think is something that I took quite a lot from in my years of reading. So I read her books. I mean, I still read them occasionally, but I read them all very, very voraciously in kind of, I don't know, 15 to 18. And then now I come back to them whenever I need a kind of a comfort read that I've read 60 times already. So those were really great. On the same thing, Terry Pratchett, again, he had that, that great skill of the humor being very related to the sort of the situation that he was creating. His was more world building humor than character humor a lot of the time, I found, or a kind of societal humor. But again, I found that the juxtaposition of humor and serious topic, I find that really works for me. Even in like the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, when they went to like that, we have serious awful thing happening and here's a joke thing that they did, that worked for me so well. I like that, because that is actually a way that humans deal with, like, look at the current situation. What have we done during pandemic lockdown? Make hilarious TikTok movies and memes. That's what we've done. We didn't sit there and make like serious, we're not all making like serious poetry and essays on the meaning of life. No, we're getting through this by shit posting. Like, that is how we work. So I love the fact that like that is the thing that is kind of being a little bit more embraced by some of these things, that we can have humor in very serious situations, because it helps us to cope. And I think so Terry Pratchett was really good at that. Here's this it's actually, all of his books are based on a really serious societal topic, and then he makes it hilarious and crazy and colorful, and everybody just kind of eats it up, while also eating the really serious topic. And he was really quite amazing at that. So I like that. I feel like he was a bit of an influence in that regard, of sort of weirdly hiding your super secret topics in your work, and making people just want to eat it a lot and not realize that that's what they're actually consuming. So that's probably like the major influences on my writing more recently. Kate Elliott's work, for a lot of the same reasons. Her world building is just amazing. So reading Black Wolves by Kate Elliott was a bit of a turning point for me in sort of the way I thought about world building. So that, the fact that it is so integral, because societies and the way they function can have such an effect. And we can say so much by who does what job, that kind of tiny little thing. It's like, who is allowed to do these jobs in this society? Who is expected to do that? What value does a society place on this? How do they get their water? All of these kinds of things are really quite integral, and they say a lot. You can say so much about a society by just a little bit of world building. And so that was a really amazing kind of, okay, yep, that's special. So, and someone else who does that really well is actually Kay Adur. Her Gadid series, her world building in that is just amazing. She works on the value of water. The money is based on the value of water, because these people live in a desert. So it's not that the money has any intrinsic value. It's that the money is a certain amount of water. It's like a token for a certain amount of water. And the water is then, so you can like spend your tokens to get other things, but then you might not have enough tokens to go to the water fountain essentially and get water. So it is just really fascinating. And like, so people who can do those really amazing things with world building. I'm just like in awe. I love it. I've gone on about it so long now. You want one question?
Hey, we're all about expanding on topics, so it's fine. So we do have a couple of questions, so we'll get to those first. So Ramon asks, do you have any books translated in Spanish? And if so, do you know where they can be found?
I'm afraid I do not yet. I would really like that to be a thing, though. I have, seen a couple of reviews of my books around in Spanish, and so I don't know. Hopefully, that would be really nice. Poke, poke.
But I guess that would have to be probably a different publisher. Would have to pick it up in a different language. Is that right?
Yeah. So I sold world rights to Orbit, so they would have to on-sell the rights to a publisher who would translate it into Spanish or any other language. Yeah. So I get no say on this anymore.
Unfortunately. I gotcha. Yeah, right. And then, and second question, David Cleary wants to know, so are you officially a full-time author, or I guess once maybe you get a little deeper into the traditional publishing world, will you become one?
So I am a full-time author, but not so much because, not so much because like I make so much money that it's like the equivalent of having a day job. But I was a full-time author as a self-publisher as well, because so I kind of just weirdly transitioned from I'm a stay-at-home mom with little kids to I am now an author who can stay at home. So, my partner was able to make enough for me to stay at home with the kids. So I did that. And then when it was kind of like, oh, now you're making a bit of money with your writing, there's not really much point in gonna find a job that I have no qualifications for whatsoever, having dropped out of 3 university courses. So it was just like, okay, well, I guess I am an incidentally full-time author. I mean, I have a 4-year-old still at home, so I'm kind of, I don't know, a half-time author, I guess, in the sense that I still have to parent because he doesn't go to school yet. But once he goes to school, I guess I'm a fully full-time author. Yeah.
Fully full? Well, yeah, I'll let you coin that term.
Yeah. See, my words are great. This is why I'm an author. I word good.
I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, was it Bendy that I used the other day? It was talking about reading paperback books.
That's right, Bendy copy. Yep.
Bendy copy, yeah. Oh, goodness gracious! I know we were great.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about I guess your transition from self-pub to traditional. So obviously, I guess it may have been an overnight thing, but can you speak to a little bit about you had a trilogy out already, you started this new trilogy, you had We Ride the Storm out, and you were about to release book 2. So I guess take it from there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so it's kind of both an overnight thing and not an overnight thing, like very not an overnight thing. In that, like, I was not doing anything to try to attract the attention of anyone. I had briefly queried some agents about 6 months earlier on a different project, and ended up just shelving that because I realized I needed to do a bit of rewriting on it and didn't have time because I was trying to finish the second book of this. So yeah, it was the second book was due out in, I think it was the end of March in 2019, and I had finished all of the main edits on it, and it was just sort of doing its thing. And right at the end of January, I just got an email. Nivea Evans from Orbit US is interested in my book. And apparently this is the second email she sent me, and I lost the first one. I don't know how. Thank you, email server. He's like, we haven't heard back from you, so I just thought I would get in touch again, about that and see if you're interested. And if you are, sending us like a Word document that we can share around the office. And I'm like, this is a scam, some kind of joke that people are playing on me. This is terrible.
Maybe so, Evans is a real person.
So Twitter going, who is this person? Like, oh, she's a real human who really actually does work for Orbit. Okay, all right. So, I did a lot of, kind of quiet screaming. Okay, it wasn't very quiet. It was just screaming. And shouted at Sam Hawke, who is, she's published by Tor, City of Lies, who's a good friend of mine. And she just shouted back. It wasn't very helpful. It was just, mutual squeeing at this point. And I thought, well, look, I don't know. Nothing is probably going to come of this. You hear about so many deals fall through. She's just expressing some interest. I'll send her the thing and then I'll just get on with my life. So, that was the plan. And then I ended up getting an agent who that's there's a ridiculously hilarious story about missing emails with that one as well, sadly. I seem to lose all the important emails. This agent
do not email Devin.
Yeah, right. Or if you don't get a reply, it's not always because I'm a jerk. It's because I lose them. Julie had actually replied to one of my queries from 6 months earlier, asking for the full manuscripts, and I'd never got that email. So she's ended up my agent anyway, through weird circumstances. And then anyway, so, I sent her all the books. She read through them, decided that she wanted to represent me. And we just kind of then sat and waited. And now she was the one who could poke Orbit, and it was fine. Nothing happened for ages. And so I went, okay, I'm just going to get on with getting this book out. And then 6 days before the second book was due out, I got an email from Julie saying, so they would like you to postpone the release of the second book so that they can keep everything on the table. Because if I release it, then it's not a new release, it's already been out. So I'm like, okay. So there was no offer, there was no deal, there was no indication they were even gonna ask for it. But I'm like, okay, all right, we're kind of too deep in this now. I'll pull the thing. And I couldn't tell anybody why as well. I had to just be like, we're postponing. I'm sorry, everybody. Everything's fine, but we're postponing. Yeah, that was really weird. And it was about 3 weeks later, I think, when Julie called and she's like, okay, Orbit are making an offer. They would like to buy 6 books. And I went, I'm sorry, what did you say? They would like to buy 6 books. I'm like, okay. So that was the 3 books of the previous trilogy, which was already self-published. I'd self-published the first one in 2013 and the third one in 2016, and the 3 books of the Reborn Empire trilogy. And I said, I've actually that's 4 books because it's not a trilogy. I've planned it as 4 books. She goes, okay, I'll go back. And so she went back and asked them for a 7th book, and I'm like, oh, this is what you need an agent for, everybody, because I could not have written that email where I was like, actually, can I have 7? It was just, no. So, they came back and wanted to take the 7 books. And it was a bit wild, and it took me a really long time to kind of that to settle into the brain, especially because I couldn't tell anyone. So this was April last year. They didn't announce this until January of this year. So a full year after Nivea first contacted me is when this was first announced. And that whole rest of the year, 2019, I re-edited Rewrite the Storm, went through edits on all 3 books of the trilogy, and I had to do them so quickly and stacked together that I was just working nonstop and kind of losing my mind, and I couldn't talk about it. It was actually really quite difficult. I had a few friends that obviously they knew, and I was able to just scream at them, but there was no way I couldn't. Yeah, I am a very. Can you tell I am a very energetically loud human. For someone who lives isolated in the bush and doesn't like people, I am very effusive. Yeah, so that was pretty much it. It was kind of crazy. So it's very not overnight, in that it was a really long process. And even after the offer came through, it was another at least 2 months before we signed the contract. You know, they do a lot of back and forths. We had a lot of conversation around the option clause, because I write all of my books in one world. And so we had to be extremely sure that the wording of the option clause would mean that if they didn't want to publish the next book I wrote, they couldn't stop me from doing it because it was in the same world. They couldn't use the argument that it was too similar, you know, that kind of. So we had to be extremely picky about the way the option clause was worded. It ended up twice as long as it was originally, in order to make sure that the intellectual property of my world wasn't accidentally being signed away with this. So it took a while to kind of go through that. And there was a couple of points at which there was silence for so long that I was just sure it was all falling through, even though I already had edits on the We Ride the Storm. So I don't know. It was a bit, it's an intense process. But ultimately one of those things that you can really only dream about. Like, I wasn't trying. That shouldn't happen. You know, the people who put in so much work querying and like trying to break in are the ones who should be getting the agents and the publishing contracts. And so when it just kind of happens for out of the blue for no reason, I mean, like, I had books out. It's not like it's no reason, but it feels both kind of amazing and wrong. And it's an interesting feeling to sit with while you know, see other people in the industry struggling to even be seen. Right. So it's an odd thing.
I gotcha. Yeah, you're talking about, you know, how you couldn't tell anybody. I remember, I think it was literally like right before the announcement hit. I think I had reached out to you. I think it was about book 2, and you're like, so yeah, I'm not seeing any more arcs about that. I was like, oh, okay, so yeah, I'll just grab it when it comes out. And you go, no, you can't. It's like literally, it's not going to be there. And I go, what are you talking about? She goes, oh, I can't talk about it. And I go, okay. I was like, it's just radio silence.
I was getting messages through Goodreads going, where's this book? Where can I get it? I was getting emails like, isn't this book supposed to come out? I had my pre-order canceled. And I'm like, oh, I'm not telling you why.
Yeah, no. Yeah, because we're like, you know, I know everybody was so excited for you, even though they didn't know what to be excited for. You're like, I've got this great news, but I can't say anything about it. And I'm just like, Devin, you got to give us something.
Something. I think it's funny, though. I think it became kind of reasonably obvious by the end, because I think it was a couple of months before they made the announcement. If you search for, like, if you went to look for my book on Amazon and you clicked on the paperback, it came up with like the Orbit cover to be released thing. And it's like, that's not subtle.
Yeah,
that's really not subtle. So, you know,
yeah.
The things were there. I was on their website in like my bio and everything. So like, it wasn't the greatest kept secret in publishing ever. But there was just no proper announcement, I guess.
Yeah, especially for those of you know, of us just have to go search. We're on, you know, Orbit's website pretty consistently. We'll find out before even the authors find out, you know.
Yeah. If you have Edelweiss, you will find out things before we do. Absolutely.
So David Cleary's got another question, and it's kind of one I wanted to ask. You know, you were in SPIFBO, you know, with Rewrite the Storm when it was self-published. Do you feel like that helped at all, kind of springing you to traditional? I mean, obviously you did really well in it, and it's become a really big competition now, especially with, you know, some of the winners getting traditional pub deals and so forth. But yeah, do you feel like SPIFBO helped you kind of in your journey?
It's a really tough one because I think probably not in terms of getting the traditional contract. So I know, having spoken to my editor, that where she found my books being talked about and then decided to read them was on our fantasy, so on the Reddit forum. Which would have been, so there was a kind of a brief period not too long after the book came out in June, so probably sort of somehow in the second half of 2018, where like it was the author, the local authors, like the Reddit authors book of the month, where, you know, people were doing, like, it was a book club thing, and there was quite a kind of a spate of reviews there around that. So I think that's most likely where it came from in the case of her. But I think it's also being in Spiffbo and having the kind of, I had quite a crazy Spiffbo journey too, because I was a Sunland safety net off the back of, you know, because I didn't win my group, you know, that was Orconomics, which went on to win the competition. So, you know, that's, yeah. So I had a bit of an odd, stressful Spiffbo journey anyway. So I'm sure the fact that it was doing well and being enjoyed and talked about in the competition certainly didn't harm me in any way on this journey. But yeah, I do know for a fact that that she found me on our fantasy, and I don't think I'm the only one that Orbit has picked up that's where they you know, first heard of the books and sort of picked them up based on the excitement on the Reddit forum. So I'm pretty sure that's where Evan Winter had an awful lot of love and success over on our fantasy. So, you know, and I think same with Josiah Bancroft. So, you know, I think it's a place that they kind of lurk a bit to see what the zeitgeist is kind of picking up on, if they're sort of interested in it. So yeah, and by the time I was in the finals, you know, that was the start of January. The finals had barely started when I first heard from Nivea. So yeah, I don't think it was too instrumental in the actual getting of the contract and Nivea being interested, but yeah, I don't think the extra promotional help hurt in any fashion.
I gotcha. Yeah. I remember Evan being kind of, I think I want to say he like is a pretty big not proponent, but like he's really big in Reddit fantasy, because I think he like posted on there all the time, and his book was getting a lot of you know, a lot of looks from it. And every time I got on Amazon, like the Rage of Dragons popped up, you know, when his self-pub cover. I mean, it was like always like also bought, you know, based on whatever criteria. And yeah, and I think along with Reddit for Josiah, just the fact that Mark was just talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. Because I mean that's how it got on my radar. Yeah. It's kind of nice when Mark talks your book up a lot.
Yeah.
I have to say, yeah, exactly. You know, somebody that's had such a great career in writing and has written so many great books. It's kind of like, yeah, you know, it feels, you know, almost Martin-ish at that point, because, you know, obviously that's where he's gotten his kind of blurbs from, and I know that's helped, you know, some people that are kind of outside of the community.
My book. We have, you know, there's a Mark Lawrence blurb on the front of my book.
Is it on the? Okay, so it's not on the ARC, so I'll have to see the
no, this is the fancy finished version.
Ooh. But I said you got your big box in the other day, yeah?
I did get my big box of the US copy, and it's very lovely. Yeah, it's got a very nice spine, if I do say so.
That's what we're always looking for, is the spines. So.
Yeah.
So for the audience who hasn't had a chance to read We Ride the Storm, can you tell everybody a little bit about what they can expect from the series, or from book one and from the series?
Well, Rewrite the Storm is, I guess, especially on the face of it, looks very much like a standard traditional fantasy. You know, we have three characters that we follow that are an assassin, a princess, and an honorable exiled warrior. I mean, can you get more traditional fantasy sounding than that? But you know, I gave them all a little bit of a twist in my, you know, particular way. So my assassin has an affinity for dead people for a very strange reason. There's some tricksy necromancy that happens in there, and she has a voice in her head that she very much would like to get rid of. And my exiled warrior is kind of doesn't want to be there. So he's not the kind of warrior that's super happily chopping his way through things. He kind of just wants to go home, and is very just set on trying to protect his people. And my princess is super ambitious and would like to be the empress of the entire empire in her own right. So, you know, there is definitely a bit of a burn the patriarchy about the way she looks at the world. You know, which is always a bit fun to write, I think, because this is a society that have the idea of the God Emperor, and it is kind of collapsing under the weight of many wars, very bad relationships with its neighbors, and just internal fighting, which actually is in the prequel trilogy. So the Vengeance Trilogy is set 17 years earlier and is a lot about that. You don't have to read them in chronological order. I deliberately wrote it so you could pick up the generational story anywhere and then go where you want with that. So, but it is very much, you know, lots of battles, lots of intrigue, tricksy necromancy, like I said. You know, there's a lot of respectful beheading as a death, right? But at the same time, it has what are for me very deep, emotional kind of storylines about how, I mean, especially the series. I mean, this is only the first book, so obviously you only get the start of these particularly kind of emotional arcs, sort of about acceptance of self, how far we will go for the people that we love, all of those kinds of things that really speak to me really deeply. So while it is, you know, very action-packed, battle-y, with the flashes of humor, kind of epic fantasy, it has, to me, you know, especially as you go on and follow these characters, an awful lot of heart as well.
Gotcha. So yeah, I had actually no idea that the Vengeance Trilogy was kind of a prequel trilogy. I mean, obviously you say you can read them in, you know, not chronological order, but yeah, I had actually I was 10 years old when I found that out.
Well, yeah. So for anybody who has read Rewrite the Storm in, you know, either its iterations, the prequel trilogy is a lot about Emperor Kin and Empress Hana. So that's one of the POV characters, Miko, the princess, her parents-ish. So it's about the civil war that took place 17 years before that they were a part of. So Empress Hana is actually one of the POV characters. So I wrote it the same way. It's 3 first-person point of view characters, and she is one of the 3. And then the novella that I wrote, which is the generation before again, is Miko's grandmother, so Hana's mother. So I kind of went down the female line in the generational thing. So that's a novella that is based on what happened, that, you know, it gets referenced a lot that she's, you know, dead and that the family got killed, but you never really know how and what happened. So I wrote a novella about that one as well. So you can kind of read them in any order.
You're blowing my mind a little bit because, you know, I read In Shadows of Fall last year, and it was my top novella of the year last year. It was absolutely phenomenal. And when I was reading, I started reading We Read the Storm last week, and I think it was her first chapter. I started reading it and I go, this kind of feels a little similar. No wonder.
Yeah. So Empress Lee in the novella is Miko's grandmother. Yeah. So Empress Hana's mother. Yeah.
So since kind of your early days writing up to now, how would you say that your writing process has changed, or has it? Have you, always been a plotter? Have you always, an architect, or have you been more of a gardener since? Has that changed at all since day one?
It's funny when people use the gardener term now. I just think of something that one of my friends said, that I have to be a gardener because it's easier to hide the bodies.
And in your case, it's true.
Yeah, quite literally. I think, the terms are really funny, and everybody kind of argues about like what terms are more accurate and whether they're even useful terms of ways to talk about writing. But I think in the way that we tend to think about a pantser, I am pretty much a pantser. I don't really plan. So I started Rewrite the Storm by staring at a blank page and going, I am continuing a generational story. So I have a small amount of understanding about what's going on here. I know who one of my characters is because it's the daughter of this other character that I've already written about. Good. That's a good start. Okay. I've got some of the world because I've already written in it. That's fine. Good. I don't know what I'm going to write about now. So I sat down and I thought, I need a really cool opening line for this book. And I just sat there, and eventually the original opening line of the self-published version, it's now actually the opening line of the second chapter of the new version, is it's harder to sever a head than people think. And I went, that's a really cool line. And then I was just like, okay, who is saying this and why are they saying it? And I automatically then had all of these questions that I had about this character. This is so Ra, the very honorable exiled warrior. Why is he doing this? And okay, it's a respectful death rite that they do because they believe that it's the way to release the soul. Okay, so who are these people? And so it was just like, I'm just started writing from that point, and I didn't know who he was or who his people were when I started writing. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen to them. I didn't know how it was going to end. I just sat down and started writing and just followed through and was like, okay, cool, this is exciting. Let's just keep going with this. But when I sat down to write the third book in this series, I actually did plan, for me, quite a lot. It's probably not quite a lot for people who actually plan. It's like a couple of sentences per chapter with a couple of notes on arcs. But it's more than I ever do usually, because I needed to know that I could finish the series, could tie it up. I didn't want to do what it kind of feels like, George R. R. Martin does, where he kind of just kept getting bigger and it didn't kind of know how to bring it back without just sort of hacking plot limbs off by killing people. So I didn't want to get to that stage. I wanted to be sure that I was heading in the right direction of finishing this in 4 books without them having to get like this fat. So I actually sat down and kind of planned what made sense. So I still have no idea what's happening in the 4th book. I have very vague ideas about what's happening in the 4th book because I haven't started writing it yet. But when I started the 3rd one, I actually sat down and made a plan. And I actually pretty much stuck to it. I am impressed with myself because the only time I tried to plan, I did this once. I tried to plan a 1st book. I really tried. And it ended up about 99% different. Has 5 or 6 extra point of view characters that hadn't been there before, and had a completely different tone.
Wow.
So I gave up planning 1st books, but planning later books I find to be useful because I can just extrapolate from the characters and the situations that I've got rather than feeling like I'm making something up out of whole cloth, and that it works better for me.
I gotcha. So obviously, We Read the Storm has been out for a while now in ebook. And then, they're re-releasing, obviously, the paperback version with a brand new cover that they did for Orbit on June 23rd. Do you also have audio rights for your series, either or all 7, or maybe just the 4 for Reborn, or is that coming later? Do you know?
So Orbit is doing an audiobook. It should be out on the same date that the paperback comes out. As far as I'm aware, I haven't heard that there have been any delays with that. I have heard all of the narrators do their samples, and they are amazing. So I haven't heard the finished thing. I am super excited to do so though. So there's definitely going to be an audiobook of We Ride the Storm. I don't have the audio rights to the prequel trilogy anymore because Orbit bought those when they bought the books. But as far as I'm aware, they are not planning at this point to do audiobooks for those because they're doing them more as like ebook re-releases. You can get them in paperback, but they're not doing like full bookstore distribution and stuff for those ones because they have already been out for a while. So they're kind of like little side things. So they're dropping all of those on the 4th of August as, you know, a whole package. So yeah, hopefully we will see audiobooks for all of the books in the Reborn Empire series, but it does happen occasionally when audiobooks don't sell particularly well, where they decide to cut losses and don't produce them. So, you know, that will be kind of a bit dependent. I'm really hoping that the audio, given that the narrators are so amazing, will be popular and people will really enjoy it, and hopefully we'll get to hear the whole series. But I don't know. I don't get to make the financial decisions, I'm afraid.
I gotcha. Are there going to be multiple narrators, or is it just going to be one for?
Yes, it is 3.
Ooh.
Yeah, we have 3 separate narrators, one for each of the first-person point of view characters, which is really, really exciting. And actually, they'll have to add a 4th. If they do the second book, they'll have to add a 4th because there's a 4th point of view character added in the second book onwards. So that would be exciting.
Can you reveal who they are?
Well, for anybody who has read the book and understands who I'm talking about, it is Deshiva Ajaravan.
Okay. Do you know who the audiobook narrators are? Can you release that information?
Oh, yes. I do. I don't want to mess up their names though. So you'll have to like give me a moment.
You're good.
To bring them up. So I really just don't want to embarrass myself on like live chat. Okay, hold on. It's in my pinned tweet, so I can find it easily like a superstar that I am. I am such a superstar. Okay, so Miko is being played by Catherine Chin. Cassandra being played by Barry Krennic. I think that's how you say her last name. And Rob being played by Faja Al-Kaisi.
Okay.
I think that's how you say his name. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. But he sounds amazing. Oh, everybody said, all the friends that I shared the samples with said that the Roz was just spectacular. So
fantastic. Yeah, those are all new names to me. I've started listening to a lot more audiobooks here over the past several months, just because of timing, like trying to get all these, you know, books read, your review copies and stuff. Just it's very time consuming. So yeah, like throwing in headphones while I'm working just makes it a little easier. So yeah, I'll have to check it out as well when it comes out. I kind of like to read the book and then listen to the audiobook. It just helps me make sure that I actually caught everything.
Yeah. Well, you know how things look. I listened to the Winnowing Flame series by Jen Williams because the audio is just amazing. And then I realized that whenever I wanted to talk about it to recommend it to people, I didn't know how to spell anything because I hadn't looked at the books. So fortunately, I actually have the books on my shelf as well. And so I could come and check the spelling of everything. But otherwise, I would have just looked like an idiot. Like, I don't know how to say Julia.
Oh goodness. All right, and so last question for you. So for the people who have read We Ride the Storm. Wow, I can't talk right now. What is going on? Without spoiling anything, can you talk a little bit about what to expect in book 2, which will be coming out? I don't even know the release date for that one yet. What's the release date for book 2?
Like it's like January, but like the 20-something of January.
I'm so lost on book release dates now. They're all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'll remember it. I even occasionally mess up the one for We Ride the Storm and say it's the 21st of June. I'm like, no, 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 no. It's the 23rd and the 25th. Ah! Look, all odd days are obviously all the same. I think it's like the 21st or something, but it'll be whichever is the Tuesday that's the early 20-something of January. Yeah, January. So I don't know. That's what I got for you. So, all right. So without spoilers, let's see. So it was really kind of interesting, actually. So for anybody who has read We Ride the Storm, you know the kind of note that it ends on, which kind of was it's the kind of thing that sort of blows the whole plots out of the water, and means that I had a whole load of characters when I went into the second book who have suddenly having to rethink all of their plans, and have no idea like how to kind of regroup. So it was an interesting experience going from this book where everything was kind of constantly increasing in intensity and pace, and everything was going like really steaming, like you're really kind of riding the storm. Everything's really steaming toward this one finish. And then suddenly having these characters who are going, I have to pick myself up and actually try to find a way through this. So in a lot of ways, We Lie with Death is, quieter isn't the right word. It's more personal. There's still a lot of awful things that happen. There's still a lot of the tension and everything is kind of only ramped up by what happens at the end. But a lot of while We Ride the Storm has a lot of like big battles and stuff, all of the conflicts that you get in We Lie with Death are more personal. There's a lot of one-on-one personal conflicts that people are working through. So it's very kind of tense and kind of darker and narrower in that regard. So in this kind of breath between two big epic badly books, we have this kind of darker, more personal story as they kind of trying to regroup after one thing, kind of went so horrifically wrong that they all had to pick themselves up and change direction, So it's kind of interesting in that regard. I was worried when I wrote it that people wouldn't like it as much because it's not the same, so it is the same characters and it has the same tone and the same everything. But because it's not all the same kind of big battles and set pieces like that, I thought, okay, people are going to hate it, that it's more personal, more intense in that regard. And it didn't turn out to be the case. And the people who read, the arcs still really enjoyed it. And I have, done work re-editing it for Orbit as well to, make sure that it's the very best that I can do. But it certainly is slightly different to the books on either side of it. So the book 3 that I've just about finished writing now is much more like We Ride the Storm than We Lie with Death is. So, the series kind of fluctuates a bit, and you follow a bit of a different aspects of the journey, I guess.
I gotcha. So when you're battly for book 1, not so much battly for book 2, very battly for book 3.
Right. That's right. Yeah. So I kind of it's like battling and then like intensely personal, and oh my god, you didn't just do that in book 2, and then both of those layered on top of each other for book 3.
That's a good sell. You should use that like as a selling point.
I have no idea about book 4.
So again, just add that little bit. Battly, not so much battly. Very battly in this, and then I have no idea.
Yeah. I'll just keep increasing the tension up there somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been an amazing chat, Devin, and I really appreciate you coming on so early in the morning and talking with me about your re-release. We'll say your Orbit fantasy debut, We Ride the Storm. So again, it is currently out in ebook, but it will be releasing in paperback and audiobook on June 23rd, which is a Tuesday. And we obviously all anxiously await it. And as far as following you, so you can find you on Twitter at Devin Madson, and also your website, devinmadson.com. And Do you have much of a presence on Goodreads? I mean, you can find you on Goodreads as well.
I occasionally review and mostly ignore it because it's better for my sanity never to read reviews.
I've had to talk to a couple authors, down off the cliff about reading their Goodreads reviews. It's just not a great place. Honestly, it's not even a great place for
they're not for me. But like, they're really just not for me, like there's nothing I can do about the book that you just read. There is nothing I can do about this. If you don't like it, I can't fix it for you. It's out. It's done. It's done. So there's no point in me reading what you didn't like about it,
Exactly. Well, thanks again, and I wish you luck with the upcoming release in just about 24 days. And obviously, we'll all be looking forward to book 2 as well, coming in January of 2021, and then the re-release of the Vengeance Trilogy in August. It's gonna be amazing, and just congratulations again on the deal with Orbit and all the success that's coming your way. And just thanks again for taking the time to come chat with me. So we'll have to do this again sometime, or maybe we'll see if we can't scrimmage around some more panels again. That'll be a lot of fun.
That was really good fun. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks.